Hey guys, welcome to Module 2. So for this short module lecture, I'm going to review some of the key requirements for our Module 2 short paper. And this week we're going to be focusing on judges. And the reason for this assignment is that it's important to know that judges are key personnel, not only in the judicial process of hearing cases, but in judicial administration and management of court schedules and caseloads. So in this assignment, you will examine state and federal judges, who they are and what they do, as well as the differences and similarities between state and federal judges' jobs. This will help you to more fully understand the judicial administration challenges of both state and federal court systems. And as part of your assignment, make sure you reference your textbook reading and modular resources in your submission, and I will talk about that here in a little while at the end of the module lecture. Okay, so we're going to be looking at state and federal judges, and we're going to be looking at, again, some of the basic requirements for those jobs. What are their duties and responsibilities? And so hopefully you'll get a better understanding as to what it takes to be a judge. All right, so what is a job description? Because basically you're asked to sort of prepare a job description, and you can do this in terms of just paragraphs. Or you can use bullet points if you want. But basically, a job description will include the essential job requirements. In other words, in order to have the job, what are some of the essential requirements that are needed? For example, to be a judge, in most states, you have to be a graduate of a recognized law school. In other words, something that's recognized by the State Bar Association or the American Bar Association. All right, so that's an essential job requirement. You have to have a law degree. You have to be a practicing attorney. Okay, what might be some of the job duties and responsibilities? So this should also be included in the job description. So, for example, for judges, prepare legal documents. In other words, legal opinions. Some of the job duties and responsibilities for judges would be oversee trials. All right, so your job is in overseeing trials is to keep things moving on time, because you don't want your trial to run beyond the time frame allotted, because then it's going to back up your other court cases that are pending within your particular court. And then what kind of job skills are needed for these type of jobs? For example, strong writing ability. Judges need to have the ability to write clearly and effectively, because they're rendering some legal opinions here. And who knows, maybe these legal opinions may be challenged later on. So a judge needs to have strong writing skills at a minimum. There are other skills that I'll point out in some handouts, but this just serves as a good example. So basically your job description should include the essential job requirements. What does it take to have the job? Job duties and responsibilities. What exactly do they do during their day, for example? And what are some essential job skills? What skills are really needed for someone seeking this position? All right. That way you can evaluate your own skill set and determine whether or not you think you have what it takes to fill that job. So let's talk about state judges, for example. Now, this may not be true of all states, but generally speaking, state judges, especially those that are at the trial courts of general jurisdiction, those courts and judges that handle felony matters, for example. Qualifications generally would include a law degree, some years of legal experience. Some states require a residency requirement. You usually have to live within the county in which that court is located, or have been a state resident for so many years. And some states even have age restrictions. All right. So what I would suggest you do is you look at your own home state, whatever state you live in, and take a look at what are the job qualifications, what are the job qualifications for state judges. In other words, if somebody in your state wants to be a judge, what are the minimum qualifications that they have to have? Okay, so basically this is what we're looking at, qualifications. All right, so just as an example, in California, for example, you have to have passed the state bar and have a law degree and be in good standing with the State Bar Association. You have to have been a practicing attorney for at least 10 years, have been a California resident for 10 years, And you're selected by the governor and or campaign for a local seat. So there's a couple different ways in which judges can reach the bench, all right? And each state you'll find might be a little bit different. In some states, the governor nominates somebody, and then they go through a judicial review commission, and they determine whether or not the person is qualified, and then they can go to the bench. In some states, maybe the governor nominates and the legislature votes and appoints. In some areas, it's campaigning. In other words, there's a vacant seat or you're running against somebody already a judge whose seat is up for re-election and you want to campaign. But either way, you have to at least meet the minimum job qualifications. The process for state judges, again, they're going to vary. And the book talks about this. You can take a look at table 5-1 and 5-2. Again, it may be a combination of different processes, but it could be a partisan election, which means I'm a Democrat running for judge or I'm a Republican running for judge. A nonpartisan election, which means party affiliation has nothing to do with it. You're just running against an incumbent for whatever reason, or two people are running against each other for a vacant judicial seat. Merit selection, the book talks about Missouri-type plans, so take a look at that. Gubernatorial appointment, in other words, the governor appoints, vetting by the governor's staff and the State Bar Association, and in some places it requires legislative appointment. So it's important for you to, again, try to review your own home state so you have an idea as to what is required and how judges reach the bench, okay? And so that will help you in understanding this assignment and preparing your assignment for this particular task. Now, federal judges are going to be a little bit different. Federal judges, in terms of formal qualifications, those are outlined on page 145 of our textbook. And as you will read and have read by now, hopefully, there is no constitutional or statutory qualifications that are stipulated for serving on the Supreme Court or any of the lower federal courts. All right, and so that's one of the unique things about federal judges is that our founding fathers didn't really plug in any formal qualifications per se. Understand that at the time that the Constitution was drafted, law schools weren't very plentiful here in the United States. And the law profession wasn't as robust as it is now. But that doesn't mean that there were many learned people qualified to serve as judges, and many did. Just they lacked that formal qualifications that we're so used to today in terms of a law degree and having been a practicing attorney and so forth. Okay, so understand when you're doing your job description for federal judges that we have the formal qualifications, which are pretty much nothing, but you can take a look at page 145. And then we have the informal qualifications, or what might be called implicit qualifications, and these are outlined on pages 146 to 149. And so nowadays, judges seeking the federal bench do have to show some level of professional competence. And usually that's done by being a practicing attorney, having graduated from a reputable law school, have some legal experience behind you. There's also political qualifications. Again, federal judges are nominated rather by the president, and then they go through a vetting process through the Senate, as was recently outlined with the recent Supreme Court justice. So there are political qualifications. So in other words, you have to have some political affiliation even to get your hat in the ring so that people take notice of who you are so that your name can be a potential for the president to evaluate when a seat becomes available in that particular district. Then there's self-selection, meaning you gotta want this job. You have to go out and promote yourself. So there is a self-selection process. So you can read about that on page 146 to 149. So that gives you some idea as to the overall qualifications for federal judges. Again, take a look and highlight in your short paper the formal qualifications and identify some of the informal or implicit qualifications outlined in our textbook, and then use your textbook as a source as you cite these three different informal type of qualifications. The process for federal judges, again, all nominations are made by the president after consultation with White House staff, the Attorney General's office, certain senators, and other political um, I'm looking for my word here, but for other groups, okay, other political affiliations and so forth, the local parties are always going to be involved, whether Republican or Democrat. The FBI conducts a security check. Interest groups may be consulted if they lobby against a candidate. So there's an array of folks that may be involved in this behind the scenes process as the president considers nominating someone for the federal bench. Candidates' qualifications will be evaluated by a committee of the American Bar Association. The name is sent to the Senate Judiciary Committee, which determines if the nominee is fit for the post. And then if approved by the committee, it's sent to the full Senate floor for a vote. All right, so there is a process here used by the federal government in order to evaluate the effectiveness of someone seeking the federal bench. So typical duties and responsibilities for federal judges and state judges: preside over trials and hearings, rule on admissibility of evidence, monitor testimony of witnesses, settle legal disputes, research legal issues and make judicial rulings, meet with attorneys and seek resolutions of cases. And they can go on and on, but these are just some of the typical duties and responsibilities for the position of judge, both at the state and federal level. I don't think you'll find a whole lot of difference in terms of some of the duties and responsibilities between both of these type of positions. Skills for judges, again, some things just off the top of my head: possess strong, excellent logical reasoning, strong analytical and decision-making skills. You have to have a knowledge of criminal and civil procedure, jurisdictional rules, and the court system. Top-notch writing ability, I can't stress that enough, is necessary to draft clear, concise, well-researched opinions, bench memoranda, and other legal documents. All right, so these are just a couple skills necessary for these type of positions. Hopefully in some of your research, you'll be able to identify some additional skills that you think are important. An opinion. So the last part of this assignment, you have to render an opinion. Assess the relative difficulty of caseloads of state and federal judges, and then who do you think has a more difficult job? So again, you're going to clearly, state courts handle more cases than federal courts, and that's outlined in Chapter 2. You can take a look at that on pages 46 through 48. Federal courts, take a look at federal courts. State courts are found, the workload's found on page 71 to 72. So you can take a look at the two sections of your textbook there and evaluate the types of cases and the workload for both state and federal courts as you try to evaluate and get information for your upcoming opinion. Most difficult job is based on caseload, type of cases, and amount of public and media scrutiny. So you're going to be looking at a couple different things here. So you're going to be describing, based on the caseload, type of cases, and the amount of public and media scrutiny, which judge has the most difficult job. And then you're going to support your ideas with evidence of research, specific and relevant examples based on research. So there's some good examples in your textbook as to the type of cases that each might be involved with. Maybe in your own community, you had a case recently as to something that's happened that might be used as a good example if it supports your particular position. But you'll be able to get an understanding after reading the chapters and looking at the resources, just the type of cases that each of these judges handle. So that'll hopefully be able to give you some insight, and you'll be able to come back with some pretty good ideas. And then finally, some key requirements. It needs to be 1 to 2 pages in length. You have to have at least 3 sources cited in APA format. Use the resources in Brightspace and I'll post them in the announcements, and I'll also post some resources with the short module lecture. Okay, so that's what we're doing this week. We're looking at the role that judges play, and then what does it take to be a federal judge? What does it take to be a state judge? Okay, I look forward to reading your papers and wishing everybody a great week. Thanks a lot, guys.